Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jeanne. I'm a therapist and a life coach. And we have Miss Lisa Scheller, who is our author, our in-house author and health recovery coach, and Stacey Garcelon, who is a therapist at Anamkara, a fabulous counseling group in the area. So we are so excited to have you, Andrea Sherwin, who is the president and CEO of Mental Health America. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Appreciate being here with you.
Well, thank you. We started this group. It's called Healing with Human Connection. And the whole idea is to bring people on like yourself who can help our audience understand not only physical, problems, mental, emotional, spiritual. How can we reach out and get help when there's no better person than yourself who is entrenched in the field to tell our audience, what are some of the problems you see, what are some of the support areas. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, you've already introduced me very nicely. Thank you for that. I am the president and CEO of Mental Health America in Northwest Indiana. I have been, actually this week will be my 4th year at the CEO position. Thank you. Also my birthday. I started on my birthday, so I have a big celebration with me this week. So it's nice. Yeah. And actually, I would say I've been with the organization for about 8.5 years because I actually started out as a board member for Mental Health America. I have a very long career in corporate America. And a lot of people are like, whoa, now she's a nonprofit, how did that work? And even when I came on board as the CEO, a lot of the employees asked that same question, like, whoa, are we turning corporate? Are we getting? And it was like, no. So I spent a lot of time talking about my personal journey and my story and transitioning. And so I was on the board of directors for 4.5 years with Mental Health America. Fell in love with the organization, fell in love with the passion, the mission, the dedication, and really the work that the staff there does. We're a small, I'd say we're a small but mighty team. We we're at about 75 right now. We fluctuate between 75 and 80. And so just really fell in love with the work. And around that time when I was on the board, my family went through a lot of trauma in a very short amount of time. We had a family member who was a suicide survivor. We went through the loss of both of my parents in a 3-month time period, very difficult. And after this was that time, but in 2020, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about the impact COVID has had on mental health. I also lost my husband during that time. Now that was after I joined Mental Health America, but I can tell you that working with about 75 social workers will save your life when you're going through something like that. So I have a lot of personal and emotional reasons for being where I am today. I can remember being on the board. My brother was board president at the time. He had brought me on to assist. And I was with him when he got the call that the former CEO is moving to another state. And just tongue in cheek, he said, you don't know anyone who would like to run Mental Health America, do you? And I said, I might. And I remember we sort of looked at each other and he said, I'd have to quit. And I said, I know, but you're my brother and he'll do that for me. And he did. And so, so now I've been in the CEO position for 4 years. So, a lot of people are like, this is a very unusual trajectory to go from where you were to where you are today, but it's all about personal passion to give back. So a lot of my family members who went through those trying times and even who've transitioned on, I found myself for the first time in my life really having to rely on people who dedicated their life to service and supporting and helping other people. And I remember feeling like I was taking so much out of the world at that time because I needed so much help. And it was the first time in my life I had to have that kind of help, that I remember going to lunch with a mentor of mine and saying, I just feel like I'm taking so much out of the world right now. I don't know how to fix that or how to balance that. And I remember kind of saying, it's simple. You can never repay all those people because you're not going to remember every minute of every space and be able to go back. But if you find a way to make that your life's work and use the skills you have to pay that forward in some way, do it. And that was the night I worked on my resume and I was ready. So when that call came, I already had my resume ready to go just in case. And so I really feel like it was a calling to bring my business skills to the organization, to do everything in my power for sustainability of this organization so that our team, who are really the true heroes, can go out and do what they do every day. And so that's how I got to where I am. So,
Awesome. It makes you, when you go through things, So of course we have much empathy and compassion.
Yes.
We want to help others.
Absolutely.
You received help.
Yes.
And that can be done.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
It's very
tell us
important.
about the services at mental health.
Yeah. So it's great. Mental Health America from Northwest Indiana, we're affiliated as Mental Health America National. So we're fortunate that we have a lot of support from our national organization, but we're all independently run. We run our own budgets, we choose our own programming. And in the late 90s, Mental Health America Northwest Indiana decided to really focus on early intervention prevention side of mental health. And so we really have, I love that chair, we really have a unique focus on that. And as a matter of fact, 3 years ago, I guess it's been 3 years, I lost track between 2020 and now because of COVID. When I went to our national conference, I remember being in the elevator with a gentleman from National, and he looked at my name tag and said, "Oh, you're the affiliate that works with children and families." And it was so nice to be recognized that way. Our national organization has a philosophy called the 4-stage 4. And I think we can all relate to it. If you've had a family member gone through a physical health issue before, the idea is you don't want to wait until stage 4 to try to address that issue. We know it's much more costly and it's much less effective to treat. So the same holds true for mental health. You want to try to look at issues before they get to the point where they're too late. And so about 80% of our work is done with parents and families with children prenatal at age 5. And our team of employees who are all bachelor and master's trained, they go out into homes and they work with families for up to 5 years. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful work. And the concept is building those protective factors in the home and trying to reduce those adverse childhood experiences, because we know the trajectory of a child who grows up with multiple and increasing adverse childhood experiences is going to have a much worse life trajectory than if we're able to go and work with the family, no matter what their circumstances, finding ways for them to build that protective factor so that that family unit, whatever defines that, because it's a lot of different things these days, helps move that child forward. And by the way, along the way, helps multi-generationally.
Yes.
So it helps the parents, it helps, we have a lot of grandparents involved. We work with teen moms, we do a lot. We work with teen dads. We've had a couple dads join our program as well to figure out how they can help better. So that's about 80% of the work that we currently do. But in 2019, we also acquired and merged in our sister affiliate in Porter County. And so there's adult programming on that side of things, which is fantastic. We have a wonderful, I invite her to every interview, so she can just, what we do, we have a social club for people living with mental illness where they can come in a couple times a week and learn to socialize together, and we do activities with them and really take them on field trips and do a lot of things. We have some medication assistance programs. But all in all, we have about 14 different programs at MHA. And so the full spectrum of home visiting and to that, we've been a proud partner with the state in reducing infant mortality. So we have maternal and infant health. And that's just by nature of what we do. We're working with that population. So the state recognized that and said, can you help with this infant mortality issue, which is big. Mm-hmm. And so we have smoking cessation for families. We have infant safe sleep classes. We have support groups for postpartum moms. We have support group for dads, which is on hiatus right now because of funding. But yeah, we have a lot of different programs, a lot of our own families.
Yeah. So if someone is interested in finding out about your program,
sure. Yeah, so you can certainly go to our website, which is mhnwi.org. I always say if you really want to get the feel of our true culture and what's going on every day, like us on Facebook. It sounds like shameless plug. We're very active on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the main ones, Twitter. But Facebook is kind of where we live out our day-to-day, and there's a lot of information and access to us.
Well, and I think speaking along those lines, we had just talked to Lisa's daughter, Hannah, about social stigma and why is it, and certainly Stacey is a therapist who can speak to this, why people don't reach out. Like, you talked about so many things that you went through in a very short, the most challenging things that can happen to someone within a very short period of time. And if you grew up in a family where maybe they thought, pick yourself out of your bootstraps and deal with yourself, how would you address, what would you say to someone listening, Andrea, that is struggling with something and they have fears or doubts or shame? Stacey talks about how we have shame and it keeps us from reaching out. What made you say that?
I think the first thing, and my answer to this might be different now, post-COVID, than it was pre-COVID a little bit. I think that, for a long time we fought that stigma, and we continue to fight that stigma. But we're in a time right now where mental health is discussed more widely. It is a much more prevalent conversation. I think the world is making it a little bit safer to have that conversation. It doesn't stop people from feeling those feelings because we don't want to be embarrassed, about how we're feeling, or maybe, work might think that's strange, or my kids might be thinking that way, or my parents, but I want to say that now more than ever is the time to speak up. From 2020 to now, we have seen health issues, mental health issues, literally skyrocket. We've seen an increase we do screenings, we have online screenings from multiple, and they're free, they're anonymous, you can go on our website, and we work with our national affiliate to do that. But there's about 12 or 13 different screenings you can take for anxiety, depression, there's a parent test, there's a workplace test, there's all sorts of things. And it kind of gives you a guide of where you are. So for that person who's maybe not sure, like I'm feeling a little strange, but I don't know who to talk to or where to go, or I'm not even sure if I'm having an issue, or maybe it's just we're under pressure. I don't know. You go through all these thoughts at first. Yeah, full moon. I think a good place to start is always these screenings, which again are accessible on our website, they're on our mental health informational website. And it kind of gives you a feel, I'm feeling this way, and it kind of helps you identify that. So there's a lot of ways to sort of initially anonymously look into that. But I also caution against staying anonymous too long, right? Because if you're in a crisis, or if you really feeling feels, I think it's okay, and we have to make it okay for someone to say, hey, I'm feeling weird. I don't know what this is, but this is what's going on. And I think as the listeners in that conversation, we have to be willing to take that seriously in that moment and acknowledge that someone might be feeling a way they've never felt before, especially post-pandemic. I mean, of our screeners, nationally in America, we've seen people screening for anxiety went up 93%. People screening for depression went up 62%. I mean, it's been a significant increase, and I'm sure if you look at youth data, if you guys have seen those numbers, there's been a lot in the news lately. Suicidal ideation among youth continues to rise. I'm also worried about the adult suicidal ideation, which has been going up every year since about 2011. So I think as a society, I think it's sort of bubbling up. I also think we're in crisis because there's a lot of bubbles to deal with. And we know that supply is far outpacing, our demand is far outpacing supply because we have a shortage of mental health workers. And so we're trying in the mental health field to get creative about collaborations and how we help people. We are experiencing for the first time people coming in off of the street. They have a private office, and people, ringing the bell, they see Mental Health America, and they're just coming in saying, I'm having this issue, or I had a woman stop in the other day whose nephew was having what she thought was a mental health crisis, and she took him into her home, but now she doesn't feel safe, and where do I go? And so I think it really calls on all of us as leaders of this conversation in our community to stay in touch with each other, to kind of link arms and be able to say, I don't know where to send you, or I don't know where exactly you need to land, but I can get you to Lisa, for example, or an organization. We're so proud. We're celebrating our 65th anniversary this year. Yes, it's so neat. And we've developed so many good partnerships in the community. So if it's not something we're suited at, we don't just close the door and say, oh, sorry, we don't do that. We're saying, no, okay, now we're going to pick you up and we're going to get you to where we think we can help you.
And I think that is so important, as we've done work myself in the community, what you're hearing, what other people are saying, is like, back in the day with the nonprofits, this is what we do.
Yeah.
But now, I see a lot more collaborations and partnerships, and we have to, and that's what people are looking at to help fund that. It's
Absolutely.
like, who are you working with, and how are you, joining hands to make sure that this crisis is being taken care of. So if you have your group that comes to you, or Recovery Connection has their group, what are those resources, and how do you get them to where they need to go without saying, I'm sorry, that's not our business, so
Absolutely.
you're on your own, because that's what happened to us, and it was like, and now where can we go? And you pull out the yellow pages and you're like, oh, well, and what are my choices? Like, that's really hard when somebody's going through this to say, how many times have you been hung up on?
Exactly.
And saying, well, you know, because obviously nobody else is dealing with this.
Yeah.
It sends a message nobody cares. It triggers that rejection,
It does.
isolation.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to hear about collaboration.
It's critical, and like to your point, Lisa, we're seeing that a lot. We do a lot of grant writing and fundraising. We're a nonprofit, and so we're seeing that now as sort of a requirement of a lot of the grants. You know, who are you connecting with? Who are you collaborating with? What community action teams are you part of that are helping that? Because I think I can say this in Northwest Indiana in general as an experience. I feel like we have a lot of services. It's getting that person who needs the service to the right one. To your point, if I have to go through the yellow pages and figure it out
Or
on my own, Google, that's
Yeah.
probably a more modern version of that. Yeah, I'm showing my age. But yeah, if you're having to search, you're going to get frustrated and you're probably going to give up.
Because then you're going to
Yeah.
get somebody on the other end, not knowing who you're going to get. And I remember, it's just a short story, but when I was at Doom Work and I would take the phone and somebody would call, and they got to us, and they were like desperate, like, okay, I'm having this issue, like now, like I've already called XYZ, I already called school, I called here and there. Where do I go? And I was just thankful to know Stacey, and it's like, you know what, I know Stacey, and if you call her, she might be able to help you, if not, she'll help you in the right direction. Because we can't be everything to everybody, but we can at least try to help get them towards the right connections.
I think it's important to think about it as we're a community of care, right? And so if someone's in crisis, whatever that crisis is, we know who to call, they don't, and we have to go to the right place. Yeah.
And I do think that's a fear that some people have, is that why should I go talk to someone I don't even know? How are they going to be able to help me? And as Stacey and Lisa and you really in your organization, we can make the fit right. And if the fit isn't right, we know people. And that's what you're saying. So anyone who's listening, if you're scared about, tiptoeing out and asking for help, it is not a linear journey. Sometimes the first person you see is not the best. And, oftentimes when I have a new client, I say this is, have you been to therapy and was it a good experience? Sometimes it was not a good experience. Or going to an organization or, so reaching out and beginning those conversations, Andrea, I think that's what I'm hearing you say is where it's at.
Absolutely, and I think we need to think about what are those first points of contact, right? They might be faith-based, they might be first responders, they might be schools, and so I know one of our newer initiatives we've just developed and we're piloting, and we've got a couple of organizations taking advantage of it. It's a workplace wellness program. It's called Wellness Works, because as I was looking at our own employee base and how COVID impacted really the emotional health of my organization and figuring out, okay, what steps do we need to take? And we have some of those tools and training to do that. I started thinking about, boy, all those other organizations who maybe don't have that, and employees can't just leave that at the door and then go to their job and be, hey, I'm great.
And then your colleagues at the door, don't
Exactly.
and if they have to stew about it all day, or they're really frustrated or stressed at home, and how are they going to be a better employee?
Exactly.
And what can we provide for them so that they do feel better about it?
Exactly. And so we're trying now to even reach out, like what are those intermediary points of contact? Because they're not always going to go direct from their home to, let's say, Mental Health America. They're going to talk to their teacher or their classmate or their employer or coworker, and sort of that groundswell of training and discussion around, here's some suicide prevention training so that you can identify if one of your colleagues is having a crisis, and here's some psychoeducational modules that we're going to come in and teach you and your staff so that you can identify this is what's happening, and not just that it's happening, but it's okay that it's happening, because one of the things is people fear, like, I'm too embarrassed, or they'll
It's only
think
happening
less
to
of
me, like nobody else is dealing with
Yeah.
this, or just me, myself.
So and that's the stigma thing, right? So breaking that. My biggest thing is breaking that through education. We have to be vocal, we have to collaborate, and we have to educate people.
Well, and when you talk about, Andrea, I always get on my high horse every time there's some horrific mass shooting, is somewhere along the line, that person doing the shooting was problematic, and who in that person's world didn't recognize that enough to reach out and say, this person needs help, whether you're seeing their Facebook page, or there's guns in the house, or they've been depressed or they were bullied as a kid and now they're an adult and they're angry. So I love what you're saying is, I used to call it in my school counseling, the power of the innocent bystander.
Yes.
Is as innocent bystanders as someone who has a problem, it's our responsibility, I believe that, to try to help that person one way or another.
Yes.
You know,
And sometimes it's hard, just as a human being, like, do I take that? I'm taking myself out of my current role, but do I take that seriously? Maybe they're just not
Right.
like, we're not sure. And I would say to people, always err on the side of safety.
Yes.
Take it seriously. If it's less serious, good. Then that's a little
Right.
less recovery that person has to do. But let's take it seriously if someone makes a threat or says something that maybe feels off, or we watch a child maybe who's become much more isolated or stops eating or just like, let's look for those signs and say, let's like wave that flag a little sooner so that we can try to manage it before it becomes a crisis.
that's great advice, Andrea. Thank you.
So Andrea, I just have a question for Northwest Indiana. So is there a certain area that you cover, or is it?
Yeah, so we're in Lincoln Porter County right now. That's where we're at, and always looking to expand where services are needed. And I talked a lot about collaboration, so we're very sensitive to never stepping on the toes of our partners, and we would not, do that if we're in a position to help bolster some of those programs by managing overflow. We've made ourselves available that way. But Lincoln Porter County, and some of our programming is different in both counties, just by nature. We're still fairly new in Porter and kind of figuring out our fit. We're working with some wonderful teams out there to see exactly how we can help service further collectively.
But they can still call you. And they call you in the right direction. So say somebody calls here from Fort County and here's you here.
Yeah.
You'll point them in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Where they can get the same services.
Yes.
We talked about this before. It's about people feel comfortable with people. And then when they trust you, they're going to trust that that's the right place to go.
Exactly.
But in these states of mind, there is not a lot of trust.
No.
So, they're not
There's a
really.
lot of vulnerability.
Yes.
There is.
Fear, know somebody, trust that somebody's referred somebody.
Yes. I mean, you have to open yourself wide open, and someone who's in that frame of mind, that's very hard to do. That's a struggle.
And I would say you don't feel comfortable picking up the phone, which it seems like nowadays people have a hard time picking up the phone.
I know.
It's just send a
phone.
just send an email. I'm looking for some help, and somebody can get back to you or what have you. Just so people, whatever their way of reaching out is,
That's absolutely true. And I talked about the screenings that are online. The nice thing about that is if that's the safest first step for someone, just to see how I'm feeling and where that fits on that whole list of things, and maybe it doesn't, and that's good, but if it does, then what happens is it will say, we think there's a propensity for this, and here's some tips, here's some warm lines you can call, here's some crisis lines you can call, here's some text lines that you can text. A lot of people are texting these days. So there's I think now more than ever there's a lot of different touch points, and we have to use some of those touch points until we sort of are able to bolster the field again with mental health workers.
And we're hoping that through this that we can help bring awareness
Absolutely.
and help let people know that they're not alone and that the more authentic we can be about it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that you guys are doing this.
Well, thank you for
Yeah,
joining
thank
us.
you. It's a pleasure.
Stacey, do you have anything, Lisa? This was fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, what a wealth of information, honestly. And for those listening, if you're struggling with something and you just want some information, call. Really, just give Andrea a call. Somewhat do that anonymously, but Mental Health America is a wonderful resource in Lake and Porter County. And if you're in LaPorte County and you don't know about services, I'm sure they'd be happy to show you what's available. So again, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. As we say, please be very kind to yourself. It's important that we're compassionate, because if we're compassionate to ourselves, we have the strength to reach out and ask for help for ourselves or loved ones or friends. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week.